only wrote the verse and the chorus in that first session. But I was like, they see a victim, I see a fighter. So it's like calling out what people say you are and saying, I don't have to be what they're calling me. Like they're calling me a victim of my
Come on.
circumstances, but I know that I can be empowered to be a fighter.
Join the conversation and welcome to Inside Voice.
Hello, friends. Every now and then I stumble upon individuals that stand out from the crowd. Those people that shine a brilliant light just by being who they were created to be. Recently, a dear friend of mine who was visiting Nashville saw a young, beautiful singer-songwriter performing, and she was compelled to share her music with me. I, too, was blown away by song after song, not only by the artistry, but the beautiful spirit behind them. Kayley Bishop is described as if Dolly, Aretha, and Bob Seger all had a baby. And I think that's perfect. I would have to agree. Kayley, I am so glad that you're on the show today. And I just want to thank you for being here.
No, thank you. Like the intro is just so sweet. I'm like, am I getting misty-eyed over here? It's just so nice. So sweet.
Well, you are welcome, and it's all true. I say that from my heart because, what I spotted is something that resonates from you. And I mean, talk about misty-eyed. Your songs are powerful. You have a gift, and you're quite the communicator, but your voice as well. I mean, you have a silky voice. You're a power singer. It's amazing. And I really just kind of want to hear from you as someone who is, I'm also a musician and a singer, and I'd like to hear a little bit about you and your backstory. When did you start singing?
Oh, man, I do not remember a time when I didn't. I was a little girl, like my parents brought me wherever, and I would always just open my mouth and sing a song. It's just something something I've known that I would do for the rest of my life since I was a little girl.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I was 2 years old when my parents put me on a platform to start singing with them. Is your family musical? Did you get this generationally, or just something that, okay, so you were the first one in your family?
Really? Yeah. And my grandmother always loved to hear me sing. She was so proud of my voice. And I think she actually sang too, because we found some old yearbooks of hers. She passed away, but it said, your voice is so beautiful. And wow. I'm like, maybe I get it from her. I don't know. But she never said anything to me about it. She just always loved to hear me sing. It was really interesting.
Yeah. So you were encouraged, it sounds like, and supported to grow your gift. Yeah. And where did you start singing? I mean, what were the steps toward kind of where you are today and getting involved with writers and being in Nashville? Where did you start out?
Well, growing up, my parents didn't really know what to do with me because they didn't have any music knowledge nor knowledge of how to foster what I had. So my mom would put me in music camps, but I always just kind of clung to that platform. Like in high school, I was doing all the things on the theater team, and I was playing shows, doing musicals, competing, doing stuff, but it was all on my own volition. And I'd be like, Mom, I'm doing this. She'd be like, okay. And then when it came time for school, I kind of naturally fell in line with going to musical theater school. So I went to Boston Conservatory and graduated with a degree in musical theater, but I had auditioned enough in New York City throughout that time to know that I didn't want to be in New York City as my home base. And I realized quickly I wanted to get involved in songwriting and move to Nashville. And so I ended up coming to Nashville in December of 2013, which feels like decades ago. Obviously, it wasn't even like it feels so long.
Yeah.
And I just kind of hit the ball running when I came.
Amazing. And you're making some good contacts out there, it looks like. I think what intrigues me a lot is the way there's nuances about your music and the topics that you write about. you do write about love and fun. You have some fun songs about love. You have a lot of variety in your music, but you have written about topics that really apply to where people are right now. And so I'd really like to just kind of pick your brain and see, what's inspiring you to write about some of these things. And we're going to get to one specifically that just, it did me in. I literally could relate. But let's talk about what inspires you to write about some of the difficult things that people are processing right now.
It's interesting because I feel like my songwriting journey has shifted recently, but I started out with stories that I knew. I had a hard time kind of putting pen to paper on something I didn't live through or understand.
Yeah.
And so I started with my stories because I know how to tell those.
Yeah.
And I think that's really the angle any songwriter should start from. And I almost needed to give myself permission to do that. It wasn't something that was told to me. It was something I kind of figured out on my own. And I'll never forget, in 2018, I was on the road. Or no, 2019 actually. I had done The Voice in 2018, and then I went out on the road and I was playing a lot. And one of my friends was talking about his divorce on stage. And I was like, I could never talk about that. And like, I was in the midst of like very destructive marriage. I was full of guilt, full of shame. And later on, after God walked me through my divorce, I realized that I felt so itchy watching my friend talk about divorce on stage. Like, that reason was because I carried a lot of shame. And so now I really don't hold back in writing my own story down on paper. I try not to, at least, because I want to be able to set people free from the shame that I had back then. So
Wow.
that's always like kind of a pulse underneath sharing and talking on the mic about it, and like just not being afraid to talk about it, because they're hard things. People, like, no one wants to get on stage and talk about their personal life. But I write the songs and I'm honest and I'm earnest, and I think that makes people feel like they're not alone.
Brene Brown, what really made her just shoot to the top in terms of popularity and fame was her messages on vulnerability. And I think it's very powerful when we can become vulnerable about our own story. And I think that's why I just connected with you like that. I just instantly went, there's some depth here, and there's some backstory here, which really leads me to the song that just blew my mind. And that song was called Rewrite Your Story, that I saw on your Instagram profile. There's just some little snippets of it there. And I'd love for you to tell me a little bit about that song and, what was behind it, the writing of it.
Well, the crazy thing is that it was such a God-ordained moment. I walked into this group called Songhouse, and even being there was really, I just saw God's hand in how I met the person who created Songhouse. We met at an industry event that I really should not have been invited to, but I was through a chain of events. And he said, well, why don't you come tomorrow? And I was like, okay. I went to one session, understood what the concept was, and it's basically a bunch of songwriters. We get together and write a verse or a chorus in 30 minutes, and then we share them immediately in front of the camera. And a lot of the really strong ones will get posted to Instagram. And, Songhouse has kind of become a movement, and a lot of the videos started going viral. But anyway, I landed in a Songhouse session, and on session 2, I walked in and we had a prompt. And there's a woman there who has an anti-sex trafficking organization and has her own history in being sex trafficked. And our prompt was to write her a theme song. So I normally probably, I've not written a theme song for anyone before, or that idea. And so it was interesting to just go into. Well, anyway, through my own navigation of my own personal drama, my own learning how to set boundaries in relationships, being able to identify destructive behaviors in relationships, just through my own analyzing of the beginning, middle, and end of my marriage, seeing that I was a habitual enabler, all these different things, all the lessons that I've learned just in the last 3 years, that really
Yeah.
probably was the foundation for the lyric from my perspective.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I have learned how to love God's children in such a more meaningful and deep way, not seeing them for their behavior and identifying them based on their behavior, but looking beyond the behavior and recognizing that negative behavior is oftentimes just a symptom of something deeper. It's a lot of times a symptom of a heart wound, and so, or a limiting belief that people carry about themselves. And so I wanted to address that backwards, in a backwards way. And so as we're
Yeah.
writing the song, which we only wrote the verse and the chorus in that first session, but I was like, they see a victim, I see a fighter. So it's like calling out what people say you are and saying, I don't have to be what they're calling me. Like, they're calling me a victim of my
Yeah. Come on.
circumstances, but I know that I can be empowered to be a fighter through them. Like,
Yes.
they say you're broken, so prove them a liar. So it's really an empowering song. And then the pre-chorus is, because you're not the sum of your past. All of those bad things don't mean that you're bad. And I think it's so easy to believe that we're bad.
Right.
Maybe it's
Right.
something that we did, or maybe it was something that was done to us. And that morning before I went into the Songhouse session, I was actually at brunch with a woman I had been mentoring who has a history of sexual abuse. And I think it was her that said this to me. But she's like, I just don't feel worthy of something good. And it's almost like, and it's not because she did anything bad, but it's because someone did something bad to her, thereby telling her she's not worthy of good things. And so it just kind of, these limiting beliefs about ourselves. And so that was the heartbeat behind the lyrics that I was kind of.
So powerful, so powerful. And we actually have a clip of this song, and we've asked your permission, and we're going to show you just a little clip of this song right now.
You dream of freedom, but think you're not worthy, 'cause you keep believing that you'll always be dirty. But that's not the way or the truth. There's a new destiny waiting for you. You can rewrite your story. You can turn pain to glory and make your way out of the dark. You don't have to face this lonely. I promise you're not the only one working through wounded heart. You can rewrite your story. It only takes one step forward, and I swear you'll feel a change. All you need is one word, and I know soon you'll feel the page, 'cause I've seen.
Well, it's a powerful song, and I believe it's going to really reach a lot of lives. Is there do you have like a release date? Are you working on an album? What's happening with your music?
Well, Rewrite Your Story is out. There's a really powerful music video that Songhouse was able to put together very quickly. And so that is out. You can stream the song, you can share the song, you can watch the music video. And it's just really exciting to see the journey for that. And like, my prayer for that song is that it just brings people breakthrough, that they know that they're able to rewrite their story. And for me, my story has been completely rewritten. Like, the life that I live now is so vastly different than it was 4 years ago. But I know it's because I invited the Lord into the room. And when you invite God to rewrite your story, and you check yourself at the door and you're like, I know you're smarter than me. I know that you're more equipped than me. I know that you know more people than I know. I know that, like, your word reigns over all. So, like, why would I not give him permission to rewrite my story? Because he'll always write it better. And he surely
Yeah.
has.
It's amazing. And that's my story too, Kaylee. And I love that. I think, that's the story of humanity. And we all have the same opportunity to rewrite our story. And we talk often on this program about just the process of healing and having to come to terms with what's lying beneath, the surface of all our performances, all our performing, all the fake it till you make it stuff.
Yeah.
And I feel like music is such a powerful medium. And this is why I feel like you're so special, because it's like God's put his kiss on you to say, I'm going to breathe on it, and I'm going to use it to help facilitate a safe place for people to just come and let down their guard. And I love that, you're working in an industry where you're a musician who is a believer in Christ. You are a Christian, a follower of Christ, but you're not necessarily labeling yourself as faith-based or Christian music, but rather as a musician who's writing from life experiences and the life flow that's within you. In the position that you're in, how do you feel your faith will fuel your career?
Ooh. Honestly, the thing that I consider most is, how am I saying yes? Because I want to say yes to everything that God is telling me to say yes to. And I don't know what that's supposed to look like. But what it has looked like so far is stepping out in fear and telling my story on the mic. And let me tell you, I've had people that have come up to me and been like, you need to stop talking about your divorce. And I'm like,
wow.
Okay. I've led with my faith. I've been on writers retreats with writers that claim Christ but aren't necessarily bearing the spiritual fruit. And God says we can judge fruit. So I know that, okay, well, I'm going to be authentic in my faith, and if they see me reading my Bible, okay. And I've been received by those people and then rejected by those people. And so, but it has not kept me from wavering in my reliance on him. Because I think I know a lot of people that have hit rock bottom, but they climbed out the wrong way, or they're band-aiding their rock bottom with alcohol, with reliance on the wrong relationships. And but when your band-aid is Holy Spirit, you are transformed in a way that makes you realize that you have to be fully reliant on him. I guess in a way it's like an ego death of sorts. But I came to the end of myself, and I realized, wow, I'm a worm. I'm literally a worm. The only way I believe I could do anything good is if I'm reliant on him, and if I consult him. I need him to be consulter over my life.
Yeah.
And
well, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what's beautiful about worms is what they become. The caterpillar becomes the butterfly, and I think that's truly who you are. It's something that it requires an imagination and allowing God to really breathe on that imagination, don't you think?
Man, I can't tell you how often I felt like the butterfly. But the thing is you don't want to break the cocoon too early, and you gotta I read in a devotional that talks about the butterfly, and how there was an entomologist who was watching this butterfly, and it was floating around, but it was struggling. It wasn't completely up in air. It was struggling to fly. And so he picked it up, and he noticed that there was a binding on its wings. And so he's like, oh, well, that's why it can't fly. Well, let me go ahead and just clip the binding. Then he let the butterfly go, and it flew off, but then it immediately plummeted and it died. And he's like, well, why did that happen? So he picks up the butterfly, puts the wings under a microscope, and he notices all the tiny little blood vessels that were being generated and created in the wings, and that there was a pathway for the blood vessels to go, but it took force and pressure in order for them to completely get out to the outside of the wing. And what he did by clipping the wings was keeping the blood vessels from reaching their destination, and thereby removing the ability for the butterfly to fly. And so there's a pressure for these things to exist in order for you to have full flight.
Yeah, the resistance that we often want to avoid, some of the things that we feel like we're suffering from are actually our gift. And you know what you're speaking to is those wings have to stay fluid and pliable, and they have to build. Those vessels have to build, the blood vessels. And if they don't, they'll harden, they'll crystallize. And how often do we get stuck in our bitterness instead of fighting through it and letting God have our all, just surrendering to the process that he has us in and thanking him for the gift of it, even when it hurts. I think that, you know, in that we can, you know, he fills us with, there's something in the caterpillar's DNA, it's called imaginal cells, that actually bring it to the becoming of the butterfly as it's in its formation after having been pulverized. And, you know, to me, it speaks to what God has given to us when we've hit rock bottom, when we feel like, you know, there's just no way out of this. I'm in this awful, tight little uncomfortable space and nobody understands me. I don't even understand myself. I don't know who I am. And all my dreams are dead. And yet in that season, we can be filled with a new dream. We can be filled with the ability to imagine what we can become as he's breathing life back into us. It's like the power of resurrection. And, you know, it's just so beautiful. And I see that operating in and through you, through not just your story, but the gift that you've surrendered to him, and that you've been able to just talk about the things that are real life, the love and relationship and struggle and pain and hardship. You also have a song called Sunday Best, I think. Is that right? And I'd love for you to just tell us a little bit about that song. It's wonderfully written and a beautiful perspective.
I wrote that with a couple friends of mine, Brian Sutherland being one of them. And we wrote this in the summer of 2020, and there was just so much political turmoil happening. And I think we kind of just we were letting the dust settle and sort of having a conversation about it. And then it turned into church. And I had this idea in my hook book that said Sunday Best, but I didn't really know why I wrote Sunday Best down. I was like, why did I write that? And then we talked about what it means to wear your Sunday best and to walk into church feeling like you have to look perfect and be healed and be complete. And how that actually puts off a lot of people from walking in the door, because the last thing anyone wants when pursuing a spiritual healing is to feel complete shame from the people inside the house. And we're all broken. We're all in need of a savior, but God only has broken people to use. But sometimes when we get wrapped up in legalism, we get wrapped up in rule following, it's easy to just discredit and shame our brothers and sisters, you know, and make them feel small. So it was kind of a commentary on church, but the hard side of church. But it's the church that Jesus doesn't represent. Jesus represents all who are asking, all who knock shall the door shall open. Like, there is no one excluded in his all, and he was on the cross for all. So and you know, my friend had a really wise saying. She said, you know, if you go fishing, you don't clean a fish before you catch it. You catch it and then you clean it. And I was like, I feel like that just is the gospel.
Yeah. That's good. I have one more. I've got a tough question actually for you that I'm going to go here because I think you've got the chutzpah to be able to answer this. But and I mean this respectfully, but if, God forbid, tomorrow you woke up and you could not sing again, where would your song come from? If you couldn't make the music you've been used to making that brings you so much joy, where would the new song, and would there be a new song, and where would it come from?
Well, yeah, that is a hard question. It kind of makes me want to cry a little bit. But
Yeah,
you're asking
I
me
know.
at a moment where I think I have the answer. And for the longest time, my one thing has been learn the performance, get on the guitar, get the vocals in shape, write the songs. Like every facet of performance and delivery has been my one thing, my training, my exposure, everything. And then it wasn't too long ago where God brought in another one thing. And my one thing of music then became the vehicle for the new one. And I realized that anytime I was flying out to a show somewhere or going anywhere or meeting people after shows, I would be in a position where someone would open up to me about some of the hard moments of their life. And I would just love on them, love on them, love on them, love on them. I remember there was a woman who sat next to me on a plane, and she immediately was a chatty Cathy. And I was like, okay, here we go. I ain't put my headphones in on this one. Like we're going to talk the whole time. And she opened up about, she said, Kayley, like, I don't know why I'm telling you this. I've only told like one other person, but she's like, I had an abortion a long time ago and I've just had so much shame about it. And I was like, oh my gosh, you're telling a stranger. And it was just an opportunity where God was like, love her, show her my face. And so now, even though music is the vehicle and was the one thing, and then still is the one thing in a lot of ways, the other one thing is now love my children. And so I'm like, okay, God, if you take away my voice and you're saying, hey, not that season is done, the call on my life is to love his children. And so I know he'll give me another vehicle for that.
Yeah. I think just come into a place of honesty with each other and with ourselves, and understanding, that we in our identity are not what we do, but it's who we are and who we embrace and how we love. And, I love the answer that you gave me. And I think there are, there's probably viewers today who are really listening and thinking, these are all areas that I contemplate, things that I think about, but I just have never really come to terms with or been able to break down or unpack. And, I'd love for you to, I know you usually are expressing through song and with music, and you do it so well, but I'd love for you to just communicate to somebody out there right now who is just feeling a little down about, maybe even it's a singer, somebody who feels like, life has just about taken my song and I don't know where to sing from anymore. Can you just take a minute to encourage that person and give them some hope?
This probably is going to sound like the opposite, but it's the first thing that popped into my head. And it's not about you. It's not about you. The biggest help to ourselves is often helping others and serving others.
Yeah.
And we find our hearts come back to life. It's like as soon as you step out of yourself, because it's the opposite of pride, right? But it's ego. It's still ego, where I'm focused on myself. I'm so in pain. I'm hurt. I'm lost. I'm broken. And no discredit. You probably are if you feel that way, but that's still focusing on self.
Good.
And the start of humility is not thinking diminishing thoughts about ourselves. It's thinking more of others. And so that's kind of yourself.
That's so good. One of the things that was a huge element in a lot of my own healing journey was to get outside of my own pain, get outside of my own need and to begin to look at the needs of others and then give from the resources that I could. And whether that is giving from your music or your time or your energies, your prayers, just holding somebody's hand, being with them when they're hurting. Sometimes we try to say things that we think are going to help fix it. And, you know, as my friend Dr. Mark Sharona says, we're not machines. We can't fix anything, but we are, we are spirit embodied in our flesh, and God is present, and it's His life within us that heals us, that inspires us. And I think that it's so wonderful to watch someone be able to springboard from such painful experiences and take all of that and to be able to express it in their music the way that you are. So I just want you to know, Kayley, we bless you. We appreciate that you took the time to be with us today and to share from your heart. Where can people find you? How can we follow you and follow your music?
KayleyBishop.com. Wow, I just said my married name, but I went back to my maiden name. Oh my gosh.
That's okay.
KayleyBishop.com. But on social media, I'm at Kayley Bish. On TikTok, I'm Kayley Bishop. Someone took Kayley Bish. I don't know why, but it's fine. And you can find all my music on iTunes and Spotify, Amazon, anywhere you can download music. I should be there. And I've been releasing music all year, and it's not stopping yet. So.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, listen, I hope to meet you in person someday, and I would love it if you'd keep in touch. We just want to follow you, and we'll be praying for you, everything that you're doing. I just expect there's going to be great things ahead, and I'm so glad God gave you the voice that He did. And thank you for being here on Inside Voice today.
Thank you for having me.
And friends, we want to thank you for taking the time to sit with us and to enjoy this conversation with Kayley Bishop. She's quite a light, and I know that you were blessed as well. So remember that you have purpose, and God has a plan just as well for you. Thanks for being here today. Until next time, I'm Brenda Crouch.